a major engine of contemporary digital entrepreneurship is cloud computing. Companies like Amazon, Rackspace, and Google have thrown significant resources into the burgeoning public cloud business, making it possible for software startups to enter the fray with relatively modest upfront capital. Existing cloud infrastructures and well-documented APIs enable entrepreneurs to bring niche solutions to markets with only a handful of development engineers in the most basic hardware. Instead of building their own server farms for data storage and application hosting, developers can essentially rent these resources on a fully scalable, pay-as-you-go basis, which allows startups to focus on their core business rather than on the IT infrastructure necessary to support it. Not surprisingly then, the cloud services market is growing rapidly. According to a recent report by Allied Market Research, the overall cloud services market is expected to reach an excess of $200 billion by the end of this year and $555 billion by 2020. Yet many consumers still have only a vague appreciation for how to define the cloud. For some, the transition to cloud computing is more than intimidating. It's outside their area of competency. So let's take a closer look at what these cloud vendors are doing to gain understanding of the market space. Despite the underlying technical intricacies, the concept of cloud services is not as nebulous as it sounds. The basic premise of cloud computing is the remote delivery of web applications, development platforms, and distributed computing power as services rather than as products. Users share resources over a network in a utility-like fashion, paying subscription fees as they go based on their specific needs. For enterprises and end users alike, this can be a very cost-effective trade-off for having to purchase hardware and software directly. What's more, it creates the kind of elasticity necessary to keep up the dynamic user demands, providing more space and more power when it's needed, and less at reduced overall cost to subscribers when it's not. This is made possible by hardware virtualization. This is the segmenting of a single physical computing device such that its resources are electronically available as two or more virtual devices. Each physical computing device can be independently employed to perform different computing tasks in the virtual space. This happens because data centers around the world permits hardware resources to be rapidly allocated and reallocated as necessary in real time. Cloud services are described in terms of a stack made up of 3 levels that build on top of each other. At the top level are software as a service, or SaaS providers, who basically sell access to web applications and hybrid web desktop applications on a subscription basis. Salesforce, Microsoft Office 365, Adobe Creative Cloud are all premier examples of such services which rely upon an underlying cloud platform and infrastructure for deployment of useful software tools and regular updates to end users. Below that, at the platform as a service level, which is PaaS, providers like this deliver a full computing platform, usually with an operating system. Programming language can be included as well in the environment, as well as database and web server. This allows application developers to create and run software solutions via a cloud platform without having to shoulder the cost or technical complexity of maintaining the underlying hardware. Microsoft Azure services and Google App Engine are leading examples of this sort. Finally, at the most basic level are infrastructure as a service, or IaaS providers, who do little more than offer virtualized physical computing hardware upon which application developers can run their operating system and software. Cloud infrastructures are deployed either as public clouds, which are accessible via the public internet, or as private clouds, which are independently owned and maintained with limited access and enhanced security. Hybrid clouds, which are rapidly growing in popularity for small enterprises, combine on-premises and public cloud resources such that more sensitive data can be hosted privately, even while other data are more accessible via the internet. Payment for IaaS services is usually based on how computing resources are allocated, with Amazon Web Services reigning as the leading provider in this market space. Of course, the nature of cloud computing is such that these categories are fluid, and providers usually offer different services packages that straddle the boundaries between them. Price wars are driving access to public cloud services upward, especially in recent months, and particularly at the IaaS level. In July, Google Cloud Platform announced it will provide 2 terabytes of free storage annually to businesses. That's a ton. A calculated shot against competitors Amazon and Microsoft, who followed suit in slashing their service prices. With these prices on the fall, some industry insiders like Cloudways co-founder Akib Gabbett are speculating that it's only a matter of time before PaaS providers will begin passing those savings on to their customers too, which will put downward pressure on web app prices. Meanwhile, with cloud computing becoming ever more affordable, hardware companies are becoming attractive targets for funding and acquisition. Hybrid cloud vendor Cloudian recently raised an additional $24 million at the same time data storage giant EMC acquired Cloudian's competitor Twin Strata. More recently, data to the cloud hardware manufacturer Nasuni received $10 million in new funding in support of its solutions facilitating data migration between private and public clouds. And stealth startup VMware raised $6 million in its bid to bring security directly to virtualized data centers. Cloud services markets are growing and expanding. As Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella routinely reminds developers, we're now living in a mobile-first, cloud-first world. Companies have tremendous opportunities to streamline operators and deliver on-demand solutions to a highly mobile consumer base, which is why tech entrepreneurs do well to have their heads in the cloud. More notably, every entrepreneur benefits from understanding the existing components of the cloud and the dynamic market it supports.